Well, a lot of parents have apprehension about chemistry in homeschool. They wonder, how can I teach this class? It was 25 years ago that I actually took ChemExplained in high school, they say, and I don't remember. So if they're going to teach them, they actually have to read the book and learn it alongside them. They have to learn it all over again. And we like to take that burden off their shoulders.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Gretchen Rowe for the Demi Learning Show, and I am so excited to welcome Mr. Riz, Dr. Richard Risbrut, and his wife Denise today to talk to you about ChemExplained. I am so excited to finally have a conversation about hard science, or at least that's what my kids called it. And they defined it as science that was hard. But being able to address the sciences as we educate our kids is so huge. And I am so blessed that Denise and I had a conversation that started over a briefcase in St. Louis several months ago. And I am delighted to welcome them today. We have lots of things to talk about, and I'm going to introduce our guests and we'll get started in earnest. Dr. Riz?
I'm Richard Risbrut. My students have called me Mr. Riz for over 46 years. I've actually taught chemistry for 50 years. I grew up on a dairy farm 20 miles south of here in Dalton, Minnesota. I grew up and took chemistry as my major in college. I went to graduate from Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota. I have taught chemistry at a Christian private school for 29 years. I've taught chemistry at a community school for 17 years, and the last 4 years have been college chemistry at St. Bonifacius Crown College in Minnesota. So I've taught over 50,000 classes of chemistry my whole life. I've also taught adult Sunday school on Galatians, Daniel, and the book of Revelation. I have been a church organist for 6 years, and I have been a football coach for 35 years.
Oh
And
my
so we've
goodness.
did a lot of teaching throughout my career. I have 3 married adult children. We have 9 grandchildren. They're living in North Dakota and Minnesota.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I'm fascinated by the fact that the two of you are doing this together as well. Um, and so tell me a little bit about your journey together.
Well, I'm Denise, and Richard and I have been married 48 years. And so we loved raising our children and now our grandchildren. And I stayed at home. I was the desire of my heart was to be at home with my children and raise my children. I do have a background in the mental health field. And after our children were out of school, I did go back to work. And that was one of the things I encourage young moms. It seems like when you become a mom, you think, okay, my career is over. But after our children were out of the house, I still had 17 good years of working until I retired. And so I encourage you moms, if you want to go back to work outside the home someday, that's still a possibility. Richard was often working with coaching and teaching. So I just kept the home fires burning, and I loved that. And it was when one of his students came to him, and she was now a homeschool mom, that she said, I would love to get the curriculum you taught us. And she wanted it for her student because she saw that it wasn't out there, and that's what she wanted. And so she encouraged him to create something that could be used by homeschool parents. And here we are, and this is where we are at. I like to say really quickly that we're a good balance because Richard loves the sciences and maths. I don't. So I help him to relate to people who don't love science and math because that's me. And so sometimes we help keep each other into perspective.
That's a really good thing, is to be able to have that balance in all things.
Yes.
Because whenever I'm asked a question, I start answering the question, but then I gradually go into teaching chemistry. Then I get a little poke.
Well, I'm fascinated by the fact that you majored in chemistry in college. I'd say it is a rare bird when I find a child who is interested in majoring in chemistry. So I'm interested in what compelled you as a young adult a teenager to go, chemistry, that's what I'm going to do? Because that's not common.
Well, my goal was medical school. And when I looked at all the applicants getting into medical school, a lot of them were majoring in biology or chemistry. And so I decided to go into the chemistry major. And what really got me turned on to chemistry was my teacher. I had an excellent college teacher, and I go, this is really good. I had actually in high school, my teacher was not very good, very smart, could not teach. But when I got to college, I had a smart teacher that could teach. And I was really inspired by that. And so that's where the start came.
I love that you said a smart teacher who could not teach. Sometimes we find those folks, and particularly if you have a love for something, you sometimes forget the learning curve that gets you there. So you forget how to explain to others why it's important. And
When students come back and they tell me that they use the concepts that they learned in ChemExplained at their college courses, I'll say, this really helped a lot, but on another class that I taught, it is so difficult, it is so frustrating. And in my mind, I'm thinking, that's a poor teacher.
Yes, I'm vividly reminded years ago when my now 27-year-old was in college and he begged Steve Demi to please come teach college calculus. And Steve said, I'm not interested in doing that, Duncan. And he said, yes, but you're a teacher. And that makes all the difference in the world, because he said you had the capacity to explain. And I would imagine that if you have students who are coming back to you and saying how much they valued your course materials, you're like Steve.
Well, I tell my students that calculus is actually an easy math class once you understand it. Once you understand it.
Okay. All right. Never
Calculus.
have I ever, nor would I want to. It's very amusing that I work for a math company and I think math is spelled with 4 letters for a reason, but I would rather diagram sentences with you. But to each to his own. So tell me about your journey into, you started thinking about medical school, but then you found chemistry to be so compelling, you stayed as a teacher of chemistry.
So I applied to medical school, and I didn't hear till July, so I knew it came down the wire. I applied to pharmacy school and got in, but then I got a phone call from a principal here in Fergus Falls, and I had an interview with him, and he said, I need a football coach and I need a chemistry teacher. And I walked into his office saying no. I walked out of his office saying yes. And he's a very persuasive, and they needed help. And he said, please stick around for 2 years. And I said, okay, I will commit to that. And 2 years turned into 29. And so that happened. And from there, I went across town to the public school and taught for 17 years and coached football. And then from there, I started teaching college chemistry using the ChemExplained curriculum.
So tell me now, the genesis of ChemExplained was your taking your applications of teaching in a classroom and making it possible to be a homeschool curriculum.
Yes, what I learned is if a teacher assigns a student to read chapter 1, okay, everybody read chapter 1, we'll come back to it tomorrow. How many of those students have actually read chapter 1? Not
I
very
would be
many.
wagering less than 25%.
I think that may be high. Uh, over 50,000 times in the classroom, no, not that high. So because the students know that the teacher is gonna explain to them what he wants them to learn anyway, and he does it by giving them notes, and so they are busy writing down the notes and keeping track, so would lecture, give notes, do assignment, come back and do it again the next day. And I learned that if I gave them 90% of my notes already in paper form, if they could just fill in 1 or 2 words per line, they could both listen and understand chemistry at the same time. We all remember college courses where we're writing 100 miles an hour. We don't know what he said, but we have our notes, and that's what we study. So we like to engage students in 3 senses: the sight, the sound, hearing, and being engaged, writing. And so the more senses we can get students involved, the better chances they're going to understand the concepts.
And in the evolution of that process, how did you test drive it with homeschoolers, or were you able to take what you were doing in a classroom and bring it into a homeschool
Yes,
environment?
it's interesting. When I was at the public school, they asked me to flip my classroom. So the traditional way was lecture, give assignment, come back and do it again the next day. A flipped classroom is when the students listen to the lectures at home and then come to school and do the homework. That's a unique concept. And that worked for us because I started recording the lectures. And so the students would listen to the lectures at home, come to school and do the homework. They could check whether or not the math when they're working on their assignments was correct. They could ask questions, and it worked very well. So after I started recording these on my own and not using the school's equipment, I started recording them on my own. I went to the dentist who was 20 miles here, and in the dentist chair, he says, "My son is not enjoying chemistry very much." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, he doesn't understand it." And I said, "Well, I have a course for him." So I made DVDs of my videos, gave it to him. A year later, he says, "You have to market this." He said, "There is a homeschool community out there that has a tough time understanding chemistry and how they do it at home, what to do with labs." And that's how ChemExplained was born.
Awesome. Awesome. And so Denise, when he said he was going to create this course for homeschoolers, what were your thoughts?
I knew if he wanted to do it, that he would do it. And he loves teaching, and so there is a little bit of apprehensive for me thinking of him retiring soon, and what would he do? And so, so when he had this, 10, 15 years before he retired, actually, when he created this, it was like, this is going to work great. And he still loves teaching. And so when he gets a question from a student, he gets excited about it. It gives him an opportunity to either talk to the student and the parent about what they want to talk about when it comes to science. And yeah, he's a happy camper.
When I get a question, I want to answer it right away. But she kind of pulls me back on that if we're visiting somebody in their house or if we have grandchildren at home. So she says he'll answer your questions Monday through Friday, but it's actually 24/7.
Well, that just says the depth and breadth to which you enjoy what you're doing. And so tell us a little bit about what a parent could anticipate from using ChemExplained, because you explained it to me when we were together in St. Louis. And my first thought was, geez, I wish someone had taught me chemistry this way, because I might have enjoyed it more or hated it less based on what you explained to me.
Well, a lot of parents have apprehension about chemistry in homeschool. They wonder, how can I teach this class? It was 25 years ago that I actually took Chem Explained in high school, they say, and I don't remember. So if they're going to teach them, they actually have to read the book and learn it alongside them. They have to learn it all over again. And we like to take that burden off their shoulders. The best way to teach chemistry at home is to have a teacher. Maybe the teacher is in a co-op, and that's a wonderful thing where they get together once a week and hear the instruction, hear the teaching. We like to have students have access to the teacher every day of the week rather than one day of the week. So that's a challenge in working with co-ops. But Kim explained has over 80 hours of online on-demand video instruction. There's over 400 videos that average 12 to 13 minutes. There's 20 chapters, 18 labs. The labs can be done hands-on or they can be done virtually. But labs is a whole different subject. But the most important part of a lab is, did they learn the chemistry behind the lab? You know, when I go to homeschool conference and I talk to a middle school student, do you like chemistry? You like science? Yeah, we did this fun experiment. It bubbled, it fizzed, it turned colors. And I say, what did you learn? What was the chemistry behind the lab? And they go, I don't know. I don't know. So now the labs are entertainment and not educational. And so what's most important in a lab is that students do a lab report. And there's certain features that a lab report should have. It should have the procedure, the learning objectives, the safety precautions, the collection of data. And then whenever you collect data, there's math calculations that should be performed on that. And of course, there's questions and conclusions and, hypothesis in the beginning as well. But they should have all those features with the lab report. A lab report is not finishing an experiment, giving a student a sheet of paper and say, write a lab report. No, it's giving them a format to fill in. And colleges will accept virtual labs with a homeschool curriculum if there is a lab report associated with that. So that's what we offer.
Interesting. So in ChemExplained, then you teach them the process of writing a lab report, and you put those two words together, and I'm tossed back 45 years into my high school chemistry class and remembering how we were given a rubric. Here's what your report is going to be. But there was zero instruction on what was a good lab report and what was a mediocre lab report. And it was just us rolling around figuring out what the instructor wanted to be able to present that well. And it was so frustrating. I remember thinking, if you just explain what a good explanation looked like, then we would know, failure to hit the target is never the fault of the target. So it was difficult in that capacity. And I think that's why I was probably pretty frustrated with my high school chemistry teacher.
So a instructor needs to lay out expectations that the students need to get to. But he needs to give them a path in order to get there. It isn't just, here's my expectation, and then they figure out how to get there. And I was talking to my wife today, it's like chemistry is kind of like climbing a rock wall. It's challenging. You're working hard to do it. The job of the instructor is to attach the rope and help pull them forward, make it easier for them to climb that rock wall with maybe the parent pushing from behind. So working together, we can get that student over to the top of that rock wall.
That's a good visual. I like that. And I can see that happening. Um, when you have a conversation at a homeschool conference with parents, the parents are the reluctant ones because the kids don't know. So how do you convince a parent that, yes, they can effectively teach chemistry at their kitchen table?
One of the things I like most about ChemExplain is how flexible it is. And because we do offer the program for 4 different types of students, it's a program that would work for everybody. And so we have the foundational student who will probably, in our ChemExplain program, there are 20 chapters and 18 labs. But for the foundational student, we're looking at covering 10 to 13 chapters and some of the labs. They're the student who is hesitant, who maybe doesn't want to take chemistry, who math can be a little bit of a struggle. And yet, as a parent, you feel it's important to give them a solid chemistry basis before they graduate. Then we have the traditional student. That's where about 60% of our students fall, and they would probably cover up to 17 chapters. And our honor student could cover 18 to 20. And then we have the dual enrollment programs also that can 2 different ways to get college credit. So I love ChemExplain in the sense that it addresses every type of student. And you can work with it that way.
So when chemistry is taught the right way, that includes the math calculations. We have math in every chapter. In fact, in chapter 2, we take a month just to review the math concepts. A whole month, 3 to 4 weeks. We learn about density and how to calculate from an equation. We learn about scientific notation, significant figures, slope calculations. For a month, we cover that math. And so every student needs to have that math foundation. The only requirement they need to take chemistry, we think, is Eligible 1. So once they've completed that Eligible 1 course, we teach the math after that. They don't need to have Algebra 2. It's nice to have geometry. It's nice to have other courses before they start. But as far as learning the math, we teach logarithms, we teach we teach natural logarithms. We teach the quadratic formula in our calculations. That's way at the end and into the honors chemistry category at high end of the traditional chemistry. So these students that get the basic foundation, the foundational student then would get foundational chemistry on their transcript. The traditional student covering 14 to 17 chapters, not more difficult chemistry, just more of it. They would get traditional chemistry on their transcripts. The honors chemistry, 18 to 20 chapters, getting honors chemistry on their transcripts. And again, not more difficult chemistry because it's explained, it's just more of it. And if you take ChemExplained is a long math-based chemistry course. If you take the entire course and squeeze it into a time frame of 8 months, 4 months for each semester, now you have a college course. And that's what Crown College and St. Boniface in Minnesota realized. We let them look at our curriculum, which is heavy in the math, but it's explained. They said, you know, of the 20 chapters you have in ChemExplained, we cover 18 in our first year college chemistry. And we go, whoa, I didn't know we were making our homeschool students work harder than the college students. So they said, can we use it? And I said, yes. And we worked it out. So Crown College is now using the ChemExplained curriculum as their college course. I know that because I am the instructor. But we had a company come to us at a conference and they said, so this can be used as a high school course or a college course? We said, yes. Said, can we look at this? And they looked at it. Our textbook, our teacher resource manual is almost 800 pages. Our notebook for our students is 300 pages. They looked at it and said, what happens to the student that covers the same amount of material as a college course, but over a longer period of time? They don't do it in 8 months, they do it in 12 or 14. I said, well, if they get to the end of the course, we would give them honors chemistry credit under transcript. And they said, we will give them college credit. And so there's a whole process where they take the test that I wrote, and whatever grade they get on that test will be their grade for the college course. And from there, the credits get over to the college that they wanted to go to. That's a process, and we can explain that a little bit later, but that's a wonderful thing. I think we're the only homeschool curriculum that offers our curriculum as a college course, but also for college credit for students that complete it.
I think that's pretty amazing. I think that was the thing that I found so compelling when we had our initial conversation back in March, is that you have developed something that is so thorough that even a college level, what do I want to say? An admissions board would recognize that this is so thorough. And you said something in that, Mr. Riz, that I'd like you to talk about in a little bit more depth. You talked about the fact that the students have a 300-page notebook. I love the way this is organized. So I want you to explain a little bit, because being heavily into understanding how kids learn and how kids learn best, I think you have the third rail of the best way to really learn and incorporate information. So I'd like you to explain it in a little more depth.
Before he explains that, I just want to say, when you talk about parents asking the question, can I teach high school chemistry at home? And they're nervous and they're anxious about that. This is, again, one of the beauties of the program, in that it's so well laid out. As a parent, you have a calendar, no matter what level you're taking it at, there's a calendar for you and your student to follow. You have a checklist that you and your student can follow. You do not have to do any of the teaching. You can correct. You are responsible for correcting worksheets, note sheets, tests, and you can do that with your student as part of the learning tool. But that's one of the beauties of the program, is it's very structured and it's very well laid out. And so that's the other thing. You have the teacher if you have a question. And that's what's so important about the program that I like.
So our teacher resource manual is our actual textbook. It's got all the answer keys to everything in a course. It's got blank student tests. It's got the answer keys and so on. But going back to when I first started teaching with chalk on the chalkboard, giving notes,
Chalk.
giving
There may be people in the audience who are going, chalk? What's chalk?
that really dates me. I know it does. Um, but I learned early on that students were writing down notes for the concepts I wanted them to learn, but that was taking so much time. And I learned, what if I give them 90% of my notes already, including the math problems, have them all ready for them. They could fill it in briefly, and they could listen and be engaged and understand chemistry at the same time at a quicker pace. They we would we When I started giving them my notes and they would fill in 1 or 2 words per line, which is our ChemExplained student resource manual, and the lab manual is similar to that. When I gave them my notes ahead of time and they would fill it in, we could cover a lot of chemistry in a shorter period of time. And they with the videos, they can stop it, they can go back and play it again. In the classroom, they hear it once and we gotta answer questions as they go, and that's just fine. We're finding out that students, when they study chemistry, they have questions every day. Every day. I can't imagine a student sitting in front of a textbook using 1 sense and figuring it out. So we learned it's very difficult for a student to teach themselves chemistry. It works a lot better when they hear the course explained step by step. And if the math is covered early on in the course, that's just a nice little prerequisite for what's going to come down the line.
I think that it's fascinating to me the way that you have structured this, because I think you have found the correct combination of engagement. And because of the way you've structured the notes, I mean, we've all done this. We listen to a lecture and all of a sudden our minds spool off in another direction and we're no longer focused. But because you have organized the notes in such a way that in order for me to properly fill in the blanks, I need to be attentive to the process. That to me is brilliant in the way that you have ordered that.
One of the comments we've heard from there's a private Christian school in northern Minnesota that's using our program, and we went to visit, and they gathered the students in a conference room, and we just got to have a question and answer time and visit with them after they took the class to learn from them. And one of the girls in the class said, "You not only taught me chemistry, but you taught me how to take notes." She said, "I feel so well prepared now to head out the door and go to college because I now know how to take notes and I didn't know how to do that before." So I love that we not only teach chemistry, but other things along the way.
Absolutely. I had a conversation just this past week with a parent in Pennsylvania, and they said, "What is an adept way to learn to take notes?" And I kind of giggled because I said, "Join us for this conversation," because I had seen the way in which you all had laid out notes. And I think often as parents, we struggle to know what, particularly if we did not have a good experience in learning how to take notes, we struggle to know how do we translate that for our kids.
Well, taking notes has been used successfully by teachers for hundreds of years, and, it teaches them spelling, it teaches them how to write, and it teaches them how to solve a problem, in the correct sequence. It's just a good thing for our students to learn. I It's interesting, one of our friends, Mark, from a college in Tennessee maybe, or Missouri, making the grade, actually has a speech at a homeschool conference on how to take good notes.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes.
I thought that was interesting.
Yes, his and Mark's references are excellent. The, I think the other thing that is important with your particular course is the notes aren't the end game. The notes are part of the process to be able to assimilate the learning. And sometimes we get in the mindset of if I took good notes, I'm good to go. But your notes are only as good as how you assimilate them and incorporate them into your long-term memory.
And I always tell parents, I'm a football coach. So if I'm teaching your son how to throw the football step by step, first of all, I don't give him a book to read and say, learn how to throw the football by reading this book. I show him how to do it. I teach him how to do it. And then we practice and practice and practice before we put him in the game on Friday night. And chemistry is very similar. We don't give them a book to read and say, "Okay, now go take the test." We like to practice what we've learned. So in ChemExplained, they're watching 2 or 3, sometimes 4 videos to get through the lesson, but then we give them worksheets to do, which are practice on what they've learned in the videos. We don't give them an assignment to do on something that we've taught that doesn't reflect what the teaching is and call it critical thinking. Um, we like them to practice exactly what they've been learned. So there's 125 worksheets and review sheets in our ChemExplained course. And once the students can proficiently do those, they'll do very well in an exam. And so some of the strategies that we use, one of the questions is what are some of the strategies used to help kids understand? Um, one of them is to take effective notes, but then to practice what they've learned. Okay. Uh, a lot of our worksheets are math, so we teach them how to do it. In the first problem, we show them how. On the second problem, we'll go halfway and say, press stop now and finish it yourself. And then the third one, do it all alone. And they can always go back to the video and see how it's done. And so when they study for an exam, they have their note sheets, okay? And they can take a blank piece of paper and cover up that math problem and try to do it again on a blank sheet of paper. And then to see the answer, they just flip it down and look at it. I like our teacher resource manual to be open on my desk. When I was in a classroom, I had the answer key for that lab. Remember, our students are listening to the labs at home, videos at home. About two-thirds of them did that. One-third of them did not. Let's be honest here. Okay.
And I bet you could tell the ones who didn't in a Yankee minute.
You can tell like that. So the ones that didn't do it had to listen to the teaching on their phone. Back in the day, I used to confiscate phones. If they brought a phone into the classroom, I was supposed to take it. Well, after we flipped the classroom, they had to have the phone to watch the video if they didn't watch it at home. So everybody's got their earphones plugged in and they're listening to it that way. But I would have the teacher edition on my desk so the student could work on the worksheet, because here's the deal. If they have a worksheet full of math problems, chemistry math problem to do, when they do that first problem, what do they want to know? They want to know, is my answer correct? So they would come up and look at the answer key and go, oh, yes. They would go like that. And if they came up and said, oh, now they look at how the answer is and they go back and correct it. Now they've learned chemistry. So you don't do the worksheet, turn it in, and then 24 hours later, come back to see if they got it right or not. They can check it right now. They get immediate feedback as soon as they do that problem. And that's how they learn and understand chemistry.
I love the way you've done this because, we say at Demi Learning, mathematically, where you learn math is not what you get right. You learn it with what you get wrong and you're willing to work through until you understand.
Right.
And you've done pretty much the same thing with chemistry. I'm sitting here and I am an old enough adult that I'm well past the years of chemistry, but I'm almost feeling like, geez, maybe there's things that I could have learned that would be compelling that I should take chemistry again. So I got a kick out of the parent who said, I need all the help I can get. So when a parent says, can I actually teach chemistry successfully? You have broken this down into how many videos?
Well, the instruction is 370 some videos, and then all the labs are recorded on video too, so they can be doing the labs virtually. There's 39 videos there, so it's over 400, but there's also videos that explain every test that they've taken, so they can look at the chapter 2 test and grade it with the answer key, but they can also hear me explain how the concepts are done, how they're solved by watching a teaching video for that particular test. And we have 20 chapters, but we have 3 chapters that are, I call them double chapters, chapter 2, chapter 14, chapter 17. They're long chapters. And so we split them up into a first half and a second half. So we actually have 23 chapters. We have 23 videos that are explain those tests as well. So it's over 400 in all. So there's over 80 hours of instruction. So for the parent, it says, how much time do we have to spend on this each day? Okay, to get through. Well, with 80 hours, that's 160 days of 30 minutes each. Okay, so that's a school year. That's 9 weeks.
That's just the videos.
That's just the videos.
Mhm.
But that doesn't give time, for that also has time then to do the worksheets, to do the tests, to do the labs. So that all has to be added in there as well. So when they ask, how much time does it take? Well, in the classroom, when I was in the classroom, I had a 50-minute period. Okay. And we would pretty much talk chemistry the whole time during that time. Then I would have a 15 to 20-minute assignment, and that's the time. So in the schools around here, students will spend anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes doing chemistry. And when the parent asks, how much time does this take? My initial question is, how far do you want to go? You know, it, it takes everybody the same amount of time to listen to the videos. Okay? It takes students different amount of time to do the worksheets and tests. If I hand out a test to 25 students, I have one student doing it in 45 minutes. I have another one doing it in an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. So it all depends on the student when it comes to that question.
So you're anticipating that a student is working in chemistry every day during the year that they are doing this.
Yep. And if they don't do that, that's fine. It's just going to take you longer to get to your goal at the end. If you get to between the 10 to 13 chapters, then you can give your student foundational chemistry credit and call it good. 14 to 17 traditional chemistry. We find out that students, once they get into the later chapters, they like it, they enjoy it, and they want to keep going.
One of the things though, as far as how much time and I love the flexibility, which moms love flexibility, because Richard has had golfers, he's had national trampolinists compete.
Yeah,
And-
in Olympics.
And he wanted to be done with the class before the gist of his competitions started. And so he just worked ahead. He knew his goal and he was able to work ahead. So he was able to complete that before his competition started.
I tell students to spend the same amount of time each day in chemistry. Chemistry does not start out easy and get very, very difficult at the end. It's easy, challenging, easy, average, challenging, easy. It's up and down. And so if the student finishes an assignment in 10 minutes, don't quit for the day. Start watching other videos and start working ahead. I tell my college students, work ahead all the time. Stay ahead. When we cover a chapter a week or 2 chapters a week in the college course, I said, work ahead. And then I'm asked the question, well, is ChemExplained a high school course or a college course? It's a high school course. 95% of our students take it for high school credit. It's the 5% that can take it 100 miles an hour that are in the college credit, or the ones that just continue on and finish the course at the end at their own pace that want to receive the college credit.
Denise, you had said that there were really 4 ways that a student could address this. And as a parent, how do I determine which way is the best?
I think you have to know your student. And we have parents who talk to Richard also and just say, where do you think we should begin? So he's happy to do that. I think if your student is an average student, you want to start with the traditional student level. If their goal is to finish the curriculum, you want to start with the honor student schedule. If your student you're having to pull them to the table, or get, you know that the
No, that never happens in a homeschool environment.
you want to start at the foundational level. And here's the fun part and he has had students who have been on IEPs, and he has gone to IEP sessions and they'll say, how is the student doing in your class? And he says, I don't need any adaptations for this student. And I believe, because I've worked in mental health field, it's because of the structure of his course. It's so structured that the student gets into the routine, learns what's expected of them, and does beautifully. There are adaptations, though, for the student that isn't a good writer and has a hard time taking notes. They can take the teacher manual, and which has all the notes completed, and they can just highlight the word as he goes by. Students can take their test open book if you'd like. Instead of doing all the questions on the worksheet, students can do half the questions on the worksheet. There's just a lot of ways we can help you as a parent adapt to your child's needs.
I like to have the parents start out slow and then speed up when they can, rather than have them start something that's fast and go, "Oh, we can't handle this," and then have to slow down. So we like to have our students, the parents know their students. If they start out with the traditional calendar, we tell them every day, here are the videos you have to watch each day. Here's the assignment for tomorrow. And typically, the calendar is great. It keeps them on track. It helps them finish at the end, but it makes them feel guilty if they fall behind. If they go to a homeschool conference for 2 days, well, now we have Thursday and Friday assignments due on Monday, and then so it makes them feel guilty. So that's why we have the checklist. The checklist is a list of everything that the student needs to follow from beginning to end. We have parents that say, "Don't give me a calendar, just tell me what to do in order." And so the checklist tells them what to do in order and then to help them get through the course.
So I have one of the questions that I thought was compelling is let me see if I can read this correctly. It says, I have a student who's definitely not going into a STEM field. Is chemistry still necessary? I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear what your answer is to this.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if you always know that they're not going into a STEM field. I had a very good friend whose daughter did not take chemistry. And I think her mother influenced in her decision in that, because she told her mother later, I didn't take chemistry because you didn't think I could handle it. Later, she wanted to go on to be an occupational therapist, and she had to take chemistry in college, and she was unprepared. She survived barely. But so in that sense, we don't always know what our student wants to do. I also think we've talked about how physical education exercises our body, but math and chemistry exercises our minds. And I think that's important. It also can build confidence. We need to, just like we as adults need to force ourselves sometimes to do things we don't think we can do. And once we do accomplish it, it is so rewarding. And I don't think high school students are any different. And so be sure we don't impress upon our students how we feel about a subject. We get that all the time at conferences. They walk by us and go, nope, not going to do it. What message is that conveying to their student? So try to remain neutral as much as you may not like chemistry. I understand. I was there with you. Um, just try to encourage your student and let them believe that you think they can do it, because it's important.
We also had a mom from Virginia, actually it was Virginia, that sent an email saying, "My son is struggling with chapter 5." And I said, "Let's Zoom, kid." So the parent agreed to be there. We require the parent be present when we have a Zoom call. And so we Zoomed, we did a meeting just like this. And I said, "We want you to, you have a student resource manual?" "Yes." "Show me your notes for chapter 5." So he showed me the notes, and they were chicken scratch. They were all over the place. And I said, "Mom, this is the problem. Okay, so here's a student that is very bright, very intelligent. He thought he could learn by just watching the videos and not taking any notes. But when it came time to studying those notes or doing the worksheets later on, he couldn't do it because he didn't have an examples to follow." So that's the importance of taking notes. You're not taking notes just to take notes. You're taking notes to help you learn and to remember the concepts. And so the student started taking notes, and he started learning chemistry a lot easier and a lot quicker. We tell our
Well,
students not only fill in the blanks, but sometimes we'll go to a different page and they say, write this on your margins of your notes. If you write down everything I write down, you will be successful in the course. Okay, Gretchen, I had a student complete the ChemExplained course that misspelled their name.
my goodness. Well, I love the fact that you're saying this. And one of the things that I teach from stage when I talk to families about academics is this is an incredibly valuable tool. And we, in the age of digital technology, believe that a keyboard solves all problems. And it doesn't, because what we fail to recognize is here with a keyboard, your brain can't tell the difference between this keystroke and this keystroke. But being able to write those notes out puts that into your brain properly. So I have a little bit of goosebumps here, the fact that the way that you've structured this. And I want to circle back. I want you to talk a little bit more about I'm a parent, I'm considering using ChemExplained to instruct. What kind of support do you have for me after I make a purchase? Because I know what this is, but I want you to say it.
Well, once they make a purchase, it takes us a couple hours to promote their account, to give them a level that where they can have access to the teachings. And we offer the entire course, which is 20 chapters, 18 labs, all the video instruction. If they want to order the hard copies from us, they can of the manuals. But once they have the entire course, they have access to the manuals by downloading and printing those off at home if they want to do it that way. We offer them the hard copies if they want to order them from us. So there's 4 manuals altogether, plus the new middle school manual that we got coming to market now shortly. Um, but then we promote their account, and they have access. They can also get the first semester course, which is the first 10 chapters and the first 9 labs. And then the second semester is the last 10 chapters and then the last 9 labs.
A letter comes out once they register explaining the course. And we even talk a little bit about chapter 2, which is where all the math is taught for the course. And so we tell parents, your student may not love chapter 2 because they're having to do some math, but just plow through it and get through it, and that will set them up for success.
So chapter 2 is not how the course is all the way through. Chapter 2 is the review of all the math that Demi Learning offers, Demi Math UC offers. And so we just review all that before we start with a lighter chapter in chapter 3 and 4.
So now you told me yesterday when you sent me an email that you have developed a middle school course, and I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time talking about that. So tell me what this middle school course is and how a parent can fit themselves in the frame for their student.
Well, the way this was born is that when we went to homeschool conferences and a parent would walk by and we'd say, do you have plans for high school chemistry? And they say, we're not there yet. Do you have anything for middle school? And we'd say, no, but when you're in 10th grade, give us give us a shout. And so my wife, who is always encouraged me my whole life, she says, Richard, you have to write a middle school science course. I took that challenge and I decided to write a middle school curriculum. So it's a 1-year course, and it's for grades. I'm going to say middle school. The parent can decide what grade it fits into. But the middle school manual has 36 labs, and they're all homeschool labs. They all can be done at home, and there's very little chemicals to order. But there's 36 labs, but the lab report part is in there. And it has the procedure, it has safety, it has learning objectives, a step by step, but then it has some data calculation to collect. There isn't math in every one of them, but in most of them. Then there's a few little minor calculations to do, and we show them how to do the calculations step by step before we give them a little practice to do. And then the most important part is we give them, how is this lab then connected to the real world? So there are 36 labs with real world connections. And so they're not just doing something to do it. They can learn how is this used outside the kitchen? How is it used outside the home? And so that's where the curriculum part comes in. We have catchy titles to our labs to get their attention. We build bath bombs. I can always tell a ninth grade student when they come into my class, I said, "Are we gonna blow anything up?" And even a parent will say, "No, I don't, what can I do at home to blow something up?" Like, that's what really gets them interested in chemistry. I don't go in that direction because,
It's
I
not
wanna
a good
keep I
direction to
wanna
go
keep
in.
my job.
I do think one of the questions was, how do I get students to care about true understanding?
Oh, what, Denise, you read my mind. I was going to ask you what your thoughts were on that.
This book, hopefully, when they can see how chemistry is applied to the real world or even applied to themselves, when it becomes personal, when it becomes something you get excited about personally, then I think it becomes more meaningful to you. And I know I've told this story before, but we had our youngest son. The only reason he would get his schoolwork done was so he could play sports. And he was a
Football.
he just he did not care to go to school. He was good in school, but he did not care. And then in 10th grade, and this is hope for parents out there that are wondering if their child's ever going to buckle down. In 10th grade, we caught him reading a book on his bed, and I came downstairs and said to Richard, "Something's wrong with Nicholas. He's reading a textbook, anatomy and physiology textbook." And so I went up and put more clean laundry in his room. I was trying to figure out what was going on, and he goes, "Mom, have you ever studied the human eye?" And I said, "No, I don't think I have." And he goes, "Wow." He goes, "First of all, if you don't believe in God, you would after you studied the human eye." And he said, "Secondly, I can't believe how much I love this." And long story short, Nicholas is now an optometrist. And so don't give up hope on your student. I think if you can find things to do, summer is a great time for field trips. Get them out there in the world and help them find something that excites them and that they love to do. And I think this new middle school manual is something we're hoping people who might fear chemistry or are a little bit leery about chemistry, that they'll get excited about it when they see how these experiments relate to real life.
And I have an appointment with Dr. Risbrut on June 22nd.
I think it's really amazing that you all have created an environment that you have made chemistry not this mystery, but this applicable science that kids can see its real life applications. And I was thinking about the lab report process, and I'm going to go back to Denise when we were talking about you don't know what your child is going to do post high school. I would have told you that one of my children was not intent on a STEM field. When she graduated high school, she wanted to go into special education. She's now a research biologist for USAMRID. And so I think it's really, really important as parents that we don't close the doors to potential so that our children don't feel like their options are limited. And
Yes.
I love that. I can't believe we're almost at the top of the hour. So now my questions to you are, to both of you, what should I have asked you that I haven't asked?
I think we covered it very well. I think you did an awesome job, and we just appreciate being able to share ChemExplained through your platform with others.
We have homeschool students. Of course, we got college students, but we also have micro school students now. We got our first micro school down in Alabama. We're in co-ops, and the
Oh, tell me a little bit more about that, because we had talked about this before before we went on air live. How do you work with a co-op? How do you help them figure out how to present this in a classroom, or how does that work?
Yeah, so with a co-op with 5 or more students, we offer a $75 discount for each student. That comes right off the entire course price. Entire course price is $345, $75 off of that is $270. And so that's their cost. They can have access to all the documents. They can purchase a student resource manual, which they want. Um, but co-ops get $75 discount, and then each student can work at their own pace. They don't have to all be at the same place at the same time. They have access to a teacher more than one time a week. And so we teachers come by, co-op teachers come by our booth and say, I'm the teacher. I said, "Who answers questions the other 6 days of the week?" And they say, "Well, you know, they kind of," I said, "Well, okay, we will take care of that."
That's
And
the beauty of the program, is that they can go home and they can listen to their videos and do their note sheets during the week. And then the one day a week, they can come to co-op, they can talk about it, they can do their experiments. They have a teacher more than one day a week. And it's flexible with students being able to work at their level.
and when students are ahead of other students, they become the teachers then at the co-ops. They can help. We love it when kids teach other kids. And so the teacher doesn't have to go around and answer everybody's questions because the students that have worked ahead in the course can answer the questions because they've been there, done that.
Right? A rising tide raises all ships, does it not? Being
All right.
able to convince those. And sometimes if you have a child who has enthusiasm, they can, that enthusiasm becomes contagious and you can pass that along to other kids in the class.
That's right.
So where do you see ChemExplained in 5 years? Do you all see yourself continuing to do what you're doing now? You've just created this middle school program. You're not going to do anything for an elementary school, are you?
I don't know if I'll live long enough to do that. Um, we we had it took 40 years to do the Chem Explained one, to get the notes all where I wanted to go and all the different resources to bring it in to do the math and so on. So it was the process. We're pretty excited about our new website that is up and running now.
And we'll make sure we include that website in our show notes so that parents can be able to go and see that and understand a little bit more about how the process works. Because I think being able to see yourself in that frame is so important.
So it's at chemexplained.com. And so they can go there now and a lot of their questions are answered right there. That's the front of the curtain. And then once they uh, go to chapter, they can also go to our shop tab and then try chapter 1 for free. So if parents have the question, will this work for my student? Go try chapter 1 for free. You can download the 13 pages of note sheets, the 4 worksheets, and watch the 8 videos to complete chapter 1 for free. And then they can watch lab number 1. They can download the lab sheets for lab number 1 and watch the videos. And they can take the test and they can even watch the test explanation video for chapter 1. So everything for chapter 1 is there, and the ones that follow then want a membership. The membership is for 12 months in ChemExplained, but we do offer a longer time if the parent requests it. If the student is learning chemistry, that's what we want. And once they get to the 12-month, we don't cut them off. We let them keep going if they want to keep learning chemistry.
One of the things I think is remarkable here is that you have a video that explains the test. I don't know of another course that does that. I think that is really brilliant because as a parent, I remember back in the day when I was doing this with my kids, and my goal was to make sure that my kids were in co-op environments for their high school experiences. So I didn't have to teach per se. Um, Chemistry and biology, and I didn't want to dissect frogs on my kitchen table and those kinds of things. However, knowing that this resource would be available to me would have given me a greater degree of flexibility. And I think the other thing, the flip side of that coin is we had a chemistry instructor who was very adept at knowing the science. But as you said in the very beginning, he was not adept at being an instructor. And I think it would have been much more compelling for my kids if they had both.
I think that truly, we haven't talked about that, but I think that's one of the big pluses of ChemExplained. Richard is an incredible teacher, and I know he's my husband, but he just attended a 35-year class reunion of some of his former students, and they had the best time together. And they talked to him about many things, including how they used his RISBRUT brackets in their careers. And he just has the most fun with his former students. And even in the videos that he has, there are entertaining commercials, breaks that will help motivate students and keep their interest. About every third video or so, he has these entertaining commercials, and he's a very well-respected and loved teacher, and that comes through in his videos.
Why do clocks run clockwise? You'll have to watch a ChemExplained video.
Oh, I might have to. Now, see, now you're just dragging me into this whether I want to go or not. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me for this conversation. I've really been looking forward to it because I knew that I was going to come away having learned more than I knew at the very beginning. And I think that really is the truth. I also want to thank our audience for allowing us to come into their living rooms. And I hope you're seeing yourself in the frame here that teaching these kinds of subjects is not impossible. It's compelling. And being able to keep the doors wide open for your high schoolers so that they can make decisions when their prefrontal cortex is completely developed, that may be something we don't see right now in this moment, is huge. And I want to thank both of you for spending this time with me. I'm grateful indeed that we've had the opportunity to talk. I'll look forward to seeing you all at a homeschool conference soon. And thanks everybody for trusting us today to come into your living room.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thanks again for joining us. We're glad to be a part of your educational community. You can help us grow our community even more by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show wherever you may be hearing this. Don't forget that you can access the show notes and watch a recording at demilearning.com/show or on our YouTube channel. We'll see you again next time. Until then, keep building strong foundations for lifelong learning.